everybody. I'm Roger. I'm a welding and fabrication instructor for CET, the Center for Employment Training. Okay? We're going to shoot a video today, and we're going to describe all the anatomy of a working Oxy Acetylene rig. This particular piece of equipment has been around for decades. You know, arguably one of the oldest pieces of equipment that we have in our shop. But now, one thing I want to really caution you about, if we don't take good care of our equipment, and if we don't handle this correctly, and you don't treat it with respect when you walk up to it, this thing can react just like a bomb. Okay? So besides you, this is one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment we have in the shop. Okay? So, let's take a look at it and see what we have here. A lot of people don't know what the construction of the bottles are. You know, a lot of bottles are made up of chrome moly. Okay? Of course, they're made to withstand a lot of pressure, all right? But, of course, they're not indestructible. Nothing really is, all right? Now, if you get your bottles, pay very little attention to what color they are. Depending on where you get your gases supplied from, it's going to depend on a lot of what they paint them. So there's no telling what color these could be. You know, the oxygen could be green. It could be white. It could be blue. You know, the acetylene could be black. It could be red. There's no telling, okay? Why are they different colors? I guess that's what was on sale at Walmart at the time. I really don't know. But one thing I can tell you, though, is your bottles are marked. They've got all of these inspection markings at the top, okay? So, if you want to look that up, go right ahead. It's a pretty interesting read. It'll describe you everything about what this bottle says. And if you buy your own, you would be able to tell according to that. Now, you may be wondering what the stamps are on the top of this bottle. These are inspection stamps, okay? If you look it up, it'll tell you when was the last time it was inspected, checked for leaks, that sort of thing. You know, and there's always that constant discussion, should I lease my bottles or should I buy them? Now, depending on how much work you do, how big your shop is, are you a professional, are you a hobbyist, you got to take all that into consideration. But just remember, there are laws considering these bottles and how long that they can go without an inspection. You don't want to get caught having an older bottle that you can't have filled. Otherwise, you just got a great big heavy chunk of steel laying around that we can't do anything with. So, have your bottles inspected regularly. I would really recommend once a year, even if you are leasing your own bottles, okay? So, keep that in mind. But, right now, the markings don't have a lot to do with what we need to know to operate it. Just make sure that they're up and current. Now, pay close attention to how the bottle is marked. Whenever you're looking at a bottle of gas, that should be the first thing that we're going to locate. Is what type of gas is it? Rotate the bottle until we see the label that describes each individual gas. And you'll see on here, it will be labeled with a certain OSHA discrimination. Okay, right there, description, telling exactly which one is what. Now, always look on the label. Oxygen, and it's compressed. Acetylene, and it's dissolved. And we'll get into talking about dissolved acetylene in just a little bit. But always check your bottles. You don't want to accidentally hook up the wrong type of gas. And believe me, it could be done. Some things easier than others. All right. So that describes the bottles. Let's get into the parts of the equipment. Okay? Now, each one of them comes with a regulator. We call these two-stage regulators. All right? They're two-stage because one's going to have a bottle pressure, and one's going to have a working pressure. Okay? The one at the top, what I like to think of as closer to the fitting, that's going to tell me what our bottle pressure is at the moment. And then the one at the bottom, that's going to tell us the amount of pressure that we're asking for when we decide to cut or weld. We're going to show you how to adjust all this too. So stick with me. Now, same thing over here for an acetylene regulator. It does the same thing. It's a two-stage regulator. And we'll get into the discussion about how to set and regulate these. Now, safe operation of this rig. What you do not want to do is get complacent in the shop with anything, but especially with this piece of equipment. A lot of times complacency is the biggest killer we have in our business. So what I'm telling you to do is be sure and remember anything man-made is going to fail. when you check your gas, when you're doing your gas on, and this only applies just to oxyacetylene, but anything with a regulator on it whatsoever, anything man-made is going to break, so don't stick your face directly in the path of any of these parts. A lot of people are getting into the habit of wanting to see what the bottle has in it and put their face right up to this to see as they crack that valve. We won't know how much pressure is being called for by this regulator from the last person that was using it. Did they shut it down correctly? Was it set correctly when they were running it? We have no idea. But if it receives a lot of pressure, and this is an older piece of equipment, this could possibly fail. These dials could come back out at you. Any of these pieces could penetrate your eyewear or your PPE. This adjustment valve right here that adjusts the flow of your gas on the regulator, that could easily come dislodged and shoot out because there's a diaphragm in here that receives pressure. If we have that turned up very high, it's going to be hit with a lot of force. So this has the potential to fly apart and actually hurt you, if not potentially fatally hurt you. All right, let's get into the first thing about the regulators, okay? I'm going to turn my head away, and I highly recommend that. Try to stay out of the way of the pathway of the gas. If you just happen to be anywhere where you can't get out of the way, just make sure that you are turned away as much as you can. These things will go off in the wrong direction. Turn away, open the valve. Once the valve is open slowly, very slowly, then we can come up and see what we have on our regulator, okay? Now these are two-seat valves. What we mean by that is that when it's seated all the way closed, then it's not going to leak. Now, if we open it up and we leave it partially open, then it's got the possibility that it could leak out through here because to reseat it again, you have to have it open all the way up. So if you're going to be doing a lot of cutting, go ahead and open it all the way up if we're going to be cutting for hours, and that way there's no possibility of losing a lot of gas up into the atmosphere because it's expensive. Now, if you're going to be cutting for just a minute or two, don't waste a lot of the company's time. They'll appreciate that better. All right, we've opened our valve, our regulator, and now we're going to see exactly what we have on our inner bottle. So we're taking a look. Right here we've got 1,500 pounds of pressure, 1,500 PSI. Now, these bottles, when they're full, they'll come with 2 to 2,200 PSI at a full pressure. So 2,000 pounds of pressure is immense. So remember, this could take off like a missile at any given time. Now your regulators, they have an adjustment on the end to regulate the flow of the gas, but before we get to that, every one of them has a nut to attach it to your rig. This oxygen regulator has this nut located here, and these are standard threads. What I mean by that is the action of this is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Standard threads. Now, when you use an oxyacetylene rig, about the only time you'll want to use a wrench on this regulator will be when you change out your bottles. Otherwise, don't react or enact upon these bottles with any other thing like a pair of pliers, channel locks. Remove these regulators with a nice wrench, a crescent wrench type or adjustable open-end wrench. That way it's going to hold on snugly. These are brass. Brass is extremely soft, so we have the possibility of rounding these edges off, and then you're in trouble. You're going to have to buy some new regulator, or they're hard to switch. Now, we've checked out our gas. We've got 1,500 pounds, and we need to know how much we're going to be letting out of this regulator. We'll get to that in just a second after we cover just a little bit more about the anatomy. All right, on the acetylene regulator, I want to show you some differences with it. It has a lot of the same common features, but a few different ones. Now, this particular bottle of acetylene has got a valve on top. Some, on the old days, were just tall cylinders with a recessed valve that took a T-handle. Those was for safety purposes. But they figured out that a lot of people weren't using them safely, and this is the better way. Once again, remember, it's got a lot of pounds of pressure in it. All right? The different cubic foot, the higher the pressure, if it's a smaller vessel, possibly. So just long story short, turn away from this bottle again. Now, I've opened it up, and we can check and see, oh good, nobody left us with empty bottles today. Sometimes they will happen. If that being said, if you empty a bottle, replace it. The next guy will really, really thank you. Okay, please notice on the acetylene rig itself that these are notched. These fittings are all notched. We've got a notch at every high point on every one of these fittings, starting with the regulator. The notch right here on this attaching nut means that the threads are left-handed or backward thread. So it wouldn't be righty-tighty, it's lefty-tighty. So we've got to remember that. Why in the world would they make these backwards threads? That's so that we could not accidentally hook up the wrong gas or the wrong regulator to the wrong bottle. That's simply the reason. So we have to attach this to fuel gas only. Your fuel gases are marked with a left-handed thread all the way down into your cutting rig. And we'll get into that in just a little while too. All of your hoses have that mark. With that being said, in the mechanical world, anytime you ever see a notched nut, remember, the threads are backwards. That will apply all through our industry. So if you happen to be out in the field working and you see a nut that's got these notches on it, it's reverse threads. Remember that. Okay? Moving on. The construction of these bottles, like I said before, is important. The steel is very, very hard, very tough. In this bottle here, what makes acetylene very unique is that it's made from a mineral called calcium carbide. Okay? That mineral is taken from the earth and dissolved in acetone. Okay? They dissolve it in acetone so it can help the release of the acetylene gas out of the calcium carbide. Now inside of here is a medium also, a sponge if you want to call it that, that's going to help soak up all of the interior liquid acetone. Now this acetone under high pressure is a liquid, and as it disperses under less pressure, it turns into a gas. And we're going to get into that later on how to set and adjust the flame on Oxy Acetylene rig. Okay, how to adjust our gases though, since we're dealing with our regulator. Remember, we've got to have the valve on, and then we'll be able to turn our adjustment screw, which is what this is. This is your adjustment screw for your gas. And then we're able to set our gas with more or less pressure as we need it. Okay? But remember, just like the water in your shower, unless the gas is flowing, you can't do any adjustment. All right? But we'll get into how to set up and run this after we talk about the anatomy of the bottle. Okay, one thing I want everybody to notice is that on this rig, we have what we call flash arresters. Flash arresters are exactly what they sound like. That means that it's going to arrest or stop a flash from happening all the way to the bottle. This could potentially be fatal to not only you, but a lot of individuals around you if we didn't have flash arresters, either at the regulator or sometimes you'll see them at the torque, or some people like to have them in both places. Okay? Not a bad idea. So if you want to have them in both places, go for it. Yes, a lot of people like that extra little safety measure. So, you've noticed now we got our flash arresters in place, and they are on both bottles. It is your responsibility as a professional welder to check out this equipment before you use it. Now, for the sake of your employer, don't take half an hour to make sure all of this is in good, safe, working condition. Inspect your equipment and inspect it quickly, and then you can get on to your job. You can set your regulators to the adjusted amount that's indicated from your cutting tip and what material you're cutting, and we'll get into that on our next video. And then we can rock and roll nice and safely. All right? Any questions? Be sure to message me. Thanks for watching.